you know, what you get from the gender diverse tables. And also, if you have also ethnicity in it, or even more, like all the diversity variables, it's like totally different. So that just shows, you know, it's always more ideas, better ideas, more deeply, what to say, like, so discussion so deep. And they're also very quick to see like failures and see like process the data if you are having a data or something like that. So it's so obvious. Yeah.
Well, as I warned you,
yes.
This question made me angry.
All right. Maybe not.
And for those of you who know me in the audience, you know that that's almost a constant thing around these issues. My issue with questions like this is it still centers masculinity as the norm. And women are constantly put in the position of having to justify our existence. And we have to justify our existence against masculine benchmarks that are only there because it's tradition and they've always been there. And I think of a quote of one of my favorite books, Little Women, where Jo is arguing why women should argue or should vote. And she says it's not because we're somehow Oh, are we online too? Okay. It's not somehow because women are, and this time this was an argument given, women are angels, they're morally responsible for society. And she says that's not it, it's because we're human beings. And this is the same answer I would give. What data do we need besides the fact that we're human beings and we're 50+% of this planet? And that's true. You mentioned all indices of not variability, oh my gosh, of having a diversified, you know, workforce or diversified society. So as a white woman, that's mine, but think about like, it's not just white males that are the default, it's also cisgendered, fully abled, you know, and everybody else that isn't checking those default boxes is asked to pony up data. And that in and of itself is a very patriarchal way to go about it. So that's why I was angry.
Thank you so much, Randy. I actually want to agree fully with you on everything you said and just add a little bit more to it. I also think that when we phrase it like this, we think that the man owns the leadership and the women need to go and convince them, can I have a place at your table? But that's not how I see it. I see that they're placeholders. They are just, you know, filling up the space while we can do the change that we want, you know, and that change is not going to happen if the women are doing the same. We need to also challenge the status quo. We're not only there representing women, we are changing the status quo, challenging the workplace, the work culture, etc.
Yeah, the conversation is going down a different path here, so I will, I will follow that and say like, yeah. It's like you always put a prefix before, like also in the gaming industry, you put like a girl gamer. You know, there's always like, because you are a minority somewhere, you put this girl, woman, and things into that, and why? Yeah, so I think we have to stop thinking of, as we are human beings first and foremost, and that we, So I agree with what you already said before here.
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to argue against anything that has been said. The thing that came to mind when I saw that question first was also like, we should flip the question around. Like, why shouldn't there be? And it's quite kind of obvious that there is no good answer to that. So thereby you've answered the question. But it's also maybe kind of what the other thing it made me think of is that we may think it's enough to be neutral for things to be improved. And I think that's kind of, we like to think that human nature is so good and like this will just solve itself. But not only human nature, but also just statistics point to that you have to be active. You have to actively change things. So you have to actively push to get kind of women into leadership positions for that to then kind of reinforce itself and sustain. So I have, I'm running this company called Grit now, we are, there's a 4-person leadership team. There are, 2 women, 2 men in there. Out of the 34 employees, I believe we are at 20 men and 14 women. Still not 50-50, but for a software company, as good as it gets, maybe kind of your company aside, certainly a little bit different. But that only happened because we set out to do that from day one. My previous company, just as an example, and to kind of prove that, we obviously never set out not to have women in leadership positions or not to have women in the workforce. But that was company was started in 2008. Throughout its 6-year history, we had a total of 18 employees. Only 3 of them were women, and by the time it was sold, there was only 14 of us, 40-ish white men in the company. And again, it was, that is because we didn't actively think about not making it so. Should we maybe just go the other way around since I have the mic? I don't have all the answers, but I, from my perspective, I maybe wanted to hone in on one that may get overlooked, because I was just reminded of it when I was preparing for this panel, is that in 2018, I was preparing to start a company, and I had a few competing ideas for what I wanted that business to be. But I decided to set that aside for a little bit and write more about, regardless of what the company is going to do, what do I want the company to be? Diversity and gender roles and other things are among the things I was thinking about. And then I was thinking about like my network and how I network and how I kind of get to know people and so on. And I came to a conclusion that I then wrote a blog post about, which is that because networking is such an important part of this, you kind of tend to reach out to the people you've worked with before and kind of the people that you know and so on. And I came to the conclusion that I was talking to, because I've been through this startup journey, a lot of different founders and people that were interested in the startup world would reach out to me for advice, good or not, and wanted to know how to start a company, how to get funded, just seeing if I had some advice. And these were maybe 1 or 2 conversations with Icelandic founders and entrepreneurs a week, and they were, almost exclusively men. And then I like to follow and watch what's happening in the kind of startup scene in Iceland. And occasionally I'll reach out to someone that I notice and I'll say, hey, I think what you're doing is, really cool. I like to get to know you better and so on. And I realized from when I thought about that, I realized that I was also mainly reaching out to men. And partly it was because I was afraid of how it would be received. Meaning, here's a middle-aged white man maybe reaching out to a young woman that is doing something, and I'm saying, hey, I saw on the internet that you're doing a really cool thing. It's very easily misinterpreted. And I decided to kind of, that's not the type of reach out I'm doing. I should kind of get rid of that barrier and just, obviously try to be polite about it and trust that I have a reputation out there that would kind of, allow me to do that without it being creepy. But I think maybe kind of that goes the other way around. Maybe there's also a certain shyness from young female entrepreneurs to reach out to men for advice and for, broadening that network. So this is not the core reason, but I think maybe kind of I wanted to bring a little bit of a unique point to it because there are a few much more obvious ones out there.
I remember that blog. I read it. Yeah, I have to agree on the network because I worked at CCP for 12 years, and when they were restructuring their company, and a lot of employees there, most of them were boys, of course, or men. They were, they started the company as boys, but grew up to be men. Yeah, but and they gathered around and funding their companies, and I was also like in a crossroad there, and I'm like, yeah, where is my network? Like, where are we going to, build this? And so I did not found the company at a similar time as the rest was doing, but it got me thinking, and it ended up I founded like 3 years later my company, but on my own. So and I've seen this also I started just hiring women, we started like 4 or 5, and then of course, because of how the industry is set, they experience more men if you want 5 or 10 year experience. So we have been growing, and it is really difficult to keep the balance, keeping it 50-50. But we are also not thinking just about gender, we're also thinking about education and background and things like that. And yeah, from that, and I can also see in my company is that the men are really much faster at networking and trying to bring in their friends. And these friends are not women, men only, they're women as well. But they are like, yeah, I know a guy, I know a girl, I know, no. Well, the women are still like, where is your network? So, but I think this is though slowly changing, and we're becoming much better at like building together. But it's also like saying like we don't have like a lot of role models or other women to connect to before. At least for me, when I was starting in the industry in 2002. But now I see this is changing a lot. And when I was founding my company, the CEO at CCP said like, oh, there was a woman on the board you should connect to. And I'm like, yeah, but she's in another industry. She's not in the video game industry, but she's a woman. So it's like still the men are connecting me with a woman instead of, I would rather just talk to him because he has a 20-year experience in the video game industry. So we also have to change that kind of how we talk to each other and build our network.
I want to agree with what you said and add a little bit more from what I experienced also as a woman, a foreign woman. The barriers that we face are everything that you mentioned on steroids and 10 other things that you would never think of. So, for example, the accessibility to, connection networks and so on. For example, when you are approaching someone as a foreign woman who is short and young, how do they perceive you as differently as they will perceive you? Like you are offering something. I might be asking for something, You are offering me something, but I have also something to add, And there are other things, to that, like how that perception, that lack of accessibility to connection, to, not understanding an event is in Icelandic, I don't know anyone there. The lack of confidence that you mentioned, that's 10 times more. When you don't speak the language, you don't know anyone there, and that translates also in, for example, the pay gap. How huge it is for women of foreign origin, and how do you start a negotiation when your salary is already so low, and how, everything is set up to continue in that way, how fighting at Orlov is made out of, the average of your income, and if your partner is making more, he will go back earlier, and you will have to stay at home, and the gap between fighting at Orlov and Lake Scully Spot, then you will have a huge gap in your CV. How do you explain that, And like I said, for foreign women, all of that is just so much more, and we just need to fight harder, and build so much more resilient, but the structural barriers are so huge, and I hope that Randi will have so much more with so many more years, you know, carrying. No, yeah, I mean, you have like, you know, created the path for all the foreign women that came afterwards. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? This is only flattering, you know. Like I'm a young woman. I've been living in Iceland for 5 years, you know, and things are very hard for me. Like, don't get me wrong, but I also do have privileges. I have, you know, financial stability. I am here. I have my self-confidence is already speaking for itself. But, you know, for the women that were before, they did not have these role models. Like, there were no Randis here, you know, 10 years ago. So it's so important, you know, you mentioned it, the role models, and it's not only, you know, gender, it's intersectional. It's women of foreign origin, women with disabilities, you know, like LGBTQ, everything that you need to consider, you know, it plays a role in all of this. So.
Thank you. So technically you're right, there was no me here 10 years ago because I came 8 years ago. So yes, you know, all I can say is 100% yes, but I am gonna push back a little bit on women being shy about reaching out, because I'm not shy. I'm actually quite confident. I speak Icelandic, not perfectly, but as the 5th language I speak, I don't care if it's perfect or not. I will murder it in my own special way. But I'm not gonna reach out to you because, and this is my own bias, I don't wanna be gaslit. I don't wanna be told that things are the way they are because they're not for us, you know, as you were so eloquently saying. I don't wanna be presented with the standard Icelandic answers, the standard pathways. I don't want people, and this has happened, to be like, oh, no, they aren't saying that because you're not Icelandic. I'm like, no, they literally said I shouldn't have my position because I'm not Icelandic. You know, and so like, I don't have, and at this point in my life, I don't have the patience for this. I don't have the emotional energy for this. After just surviving a day, navigating through a society that is constantly telling me I don't belong, I go home and I'm not reaching out. I'm like lying down or spending time with my puppy, and I don't think it's my responsibility to reach out, because your standard Icelander is the one with the increased power and the increased information, and I have a strong belief that if you are in that position, it is your responsibility to reach out. And I have a position of some power in this, and I have a high amount of information in a certain field, and it is my responsibility to be that champion for somebody else. It is my responsibility, because I have this power and I have this privilege, to be that cheerleader. And my network is huge, and my network is awesome, but they're not Icelanders, because Icelanders will not open their network. And it's said time and again that people of foreign origin don't have a network here, and I'm like, that is a word I'm not gonna say because I respect other people in this audience a lot, but that's a lie. I have an amazing network here of people that, and almost all women, I can turn to. They know they can turn to me, but it's not you. Because it just takes that extra energy and motivation to be like, oh God, and now I've got to sit there and explain myself for 15 minutes. It's like finding a new doctor. You know, you find a new doctor and you're like, oh God, here we go. I've got to start from the beginning, and I don't know if you're going to listen to me. You know, and so I think there are obvious structural barriers like the salary, yeah, and the preconceived notions, but it's really, at my point in life, the emotional and psychological drain that it puts on me. And I'm just like, I'm done at the end of the day. I'm done. I want to be with my family. I want to be with my cheerleaders and the people who love me and my puppy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so nice to listen to all of you, and so interesting to listen to your personal stories. And well, it's not a surprise for me because I have listened to many people in my work as a consultant. And well, we have had like 450 interviews with, well, both men and women, more women though than men. And well, it's, if I reflect on the question, and I start with like the helicopter view, the problem we have in Iceland is that we have very good policy. So like the macro environment is very good and very like, we are a role model in that. But what is the problem? The problem is that now we need to look at it with a microscope into each organization. And that is really what we need to do in order to change this. Because of the company culture, that is our problem. And there are so many, well, if we try to break that down a bit, there are so many issues. But I would like to name two. Of course, stereotypes. And that's basically what all of you have been talking about, is the stereotypes. That's really what is the main problem. It's this perception we have of a leader, of a person in the gaming industry, of a person in the IT industry. And this is something that we need to break down. And that we do that with role models, of course. And so it's great to have also role models, not only women, but also women of another, not Icelandic women. Because, you know, there are so many other factors we need to address. And I'm really glad that we are opening that discussion very much now. I hope, like the last maybe 1 or 2 years. And of course, like Me Too has influenced the workplace in a like a very hard way. It's the company culture is changing a lot, and I feel that people are now like more. Before it was more like, well, okay, let's just fix this because we look a bit better, like our appearance is better. Now it's more of like a necessity, you know, because nobody wants to really have the scandal, and that's because women are well, they've had enough. A bit like you were saying before, you know, okay, we don't want this bullshit anymore. You know, please just be honest. Let's just talk about the situation as it is. Let's talk about the obstacles. And another obstacle in the company culture is the informal power groups of men. And that is very obvious, and this is something we have seen like a pattern everywhere we go. And this is something that we don't have access to because it's informal. It's not in the organizational chart. And I see many women managers and directors come into the organization. They have a position where they should have power and they should have access to decision making. And they see that they don't have it because the decisions are taken somewhere else. And that's, it's very stereotypical, but it's in the golf course or the golf course, in the pub after work. And so it's like, yeah, this is really a problem. And it's really hard to access this. And that is a bit what you were saying, Hjalmar. It's also how do you address it? But I think there's one thing that is, we need to keep in mind, that women who are in a group with men, they just want to be their, like companions at work. They are not like sexual objects or something that you need to look at as a sexual object. And that's, I think, is really important to remember. It's like, you know, you are just there as one of the managers or one of the employees. And it doesn't really matter if you're a man or a woman or whatever you are. It doesn't matter. So that's why I think it's important that, you know, I just want to say, like Hjalmar, what you were talking about, please reach out to all the women. Because we all know that, well, women know it. We feel the difference immediately between someone hitting on us or giving us advice. It's very obvious. It's so obvious. So I want to encourage you. And I reached out to you when I was in my project, but we didn't find the time. But, you know, I was really keen on talking to you, and we will do that later. Because I know you have great advice and you've always been very helpful. And yeah, so that's kind of, I could be talking a lot, but it's so interesting to listen to you, so I'm going to stop now.
Okay, excellent points, and yes, thank you for sharing all of this. And I am still stuck on the idea that you just pointed out, where obviously in Iceland, probably just anywhere, you really need connections. you need to know people, and we've established that's a lot harder for women of foreign origin. I am one myself. I also understand how that works, and it's just, but it takes so much energy. You have to go out to events. You have to meet with people. You have to remember to keep in touch with this person that you maybe haven't, spoken in a while. That, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of energy. So, if connections and the network are so important for women being able to, kind of advance in their positions, then how does that work with the fact that, based on the Keening and Venus study that Empower has led, it looked like women still feel like they're shouldering most of the responsibility in the household. So I'm going to be done with my work and be expected, both by myself and just my family, that I'm going to be going home and I'm going to take care of my children and I'm going to spend time on that. And then when do I actually get the time to go and also, just join random events and join random conferences and just have the time to just, and the mental energy to just remember to keep in touch with people. How do you do it? Tell me.
Well, I just want to reflect on the survey because it was very interesting. And I have to say, when we saw the results at the beginning, and we saw there are like fewer women who wants to become managers than men, at first I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it, because I really was hoping that we would prove the other way around. But then we started to, when we dived into the data, it's, well, of course, what you were saying is the responsibility at the house. 6 times more women at like a general level in the companies are responsible for fully responsible for the household. And if you go to the managerial level, it's 14 times more women that are responsible. It was really interesting for the household. And and also when you're looking at like the experience of at the managerial level, you saw that the women, they are facing more obstacles as managers. They need to prove themselves more. They are doubted, and they are also more, they are experiencing more like what you call dirty jokes, downgrading talk, and things like that. So at the end, I think it's just very clever of women not wanting to be there, because they have more responsibility at the house, at the household, and it's also more difficult for them to be a manager, because it's more stressful, much more stressful. So when we're facing the situation like this, then it's such a it's much like a harder decision for a woman to make to become a manager than a man. So this is the problem we are facing.
I am so happy you brought that up, because when I saw that statistic, and those kind of statistics also sit a little uneasy with me, because it makes it seem like women don't have autonomy and agency to make their own decisions. And I'm like, well, with the current company structure, I'm actually not surprised. Like, being a manager isn't a big carrot. It's not like it's going to be like the gold star of gold stars that's going to lead to everything fabulous. It can literally just mean a lot more work. And if you're already maxed out at home and you're maxed out doing work at work and whatever other interests you have, which hopefully you can have, why would I? Why would I? And honestly, as a manager, it's also like, I'm not there to be your mother. And I think people expect women managers to mom them. And I'm like, I mom one human being in my life, that's my child. I don't even, at least I try not to mom my partner, even though society pushes me in that direction. I don't want to mom other people. I have other things to do in my life. And your thing about events, so I coming as a woman of foreign origin, yes, show up. I mean, you can accomplish so much in Iceland by just showing up and showing up sincerely, but there's only so much you can take of showing up and like the Icelanders giving you the side eye and looking at you and closing into their little let's go around the wagon circle and you being utterly excluded. And I mean that at every event. Because I'm always doing a little sociology experiment in my head. 3-4 hour long birthday parties for my child's friends, not one other parent would talk to me. Not one. So, and I am the thorn in your side that will sit there for 3 hours because my child wants me to, and I'm like, okay, whatever. You know, and that's at work too. An hour in the lunchroom. Nobody will talk to me even though they know I speak Icelandic, right? Like networking events. If they're in English, no problem. If they're in Icelandic, though I speak it, it's another emotional equation that I go through. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? And honestly, quite often, it's just not worth it. And keeping up with people. I keep up with my network all day, every day. As those of you I keep up with know. Because it's a give and take. But if it's just give, which is the expectation of women, I will stop. I'm not at the point in my life where I feel like I need to prove myself by giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. So, you know, it's not just that. There's so many factors that play into those kinds of decisions that seem like no-brainers, but they're not.
Yeah, I wanted to agree with you on that. And sometimes we just need to say no. This is not my place. I will not grow here. There is nothing I can take from this place and move on. And sometimes that is very, very painful. But we have to do it for our mental sanity, you know. But I wanted to just continue on some of the ideas that you guys have mentioned. I want to address the fact that there is a part of population, they are not sitting here, but that they think, okay, if women don't want to be managers, that's the end of the conversation. Let's move on, okay? We are not here to agree with that. We are here to ask ourselves why. And I think that what Randi was saying, you don't want to be a manager because it's a hell of a lot of work. You have to prove yourself. You're exhausted from all the workload from your home. But you don't want to be that manager. You don't want to be the perception of what a manager is. How does a manager look like? How does a manager talk? What do they do with their hair? What does professional hair look like? You know, we need to challenge those things. And this is not work that needs to be put on women of foreign origin. Conversations needs to happen among also males and among Icelandic women. I see a lot of you here, you know, ask yourselves those questions, like, what does a manager look like to you? Ask your child to draw a picture, for God's sake. Like, is he wearing a suit, you know? Is he a man? Does he wear glasses, you know? Like, what do you think a manager looks like? How does he dress, you know? I don't want to be that. I don't want to be another guy in the guys group. I don't want to join the group. I want to start a conversation with workers, get them on board, see what they're doing, you know, and lobby for our ideas. Of course, if we have similar ideas, you know, we're already there, you know, but I do believe, you know, that this boys club exists, and we see it, and they meet before the meeting, and they lobby for their own agenda, and then the decision-making spaces happen, you know, but they have already agreed on how the conversation is going to continue, you know. So if we, like, this is just going back to the first question, if we, you know, put women, or imagine a world where the leadership is female, the leadership is already diverse, then we will start realizing that the workplace that we're offering is not designed for the population. But this needs to, you know, be taken all the way back. You know, we're all here, you know, talking on the very just glass ceiling level, but we also need to understand what career progression looks like. What job titles are we offering? What positions are there out there? And how are we capturing women? How are we explicitly saying we encourage female to apply to jobs in tech because women are underrepresented in this industry, for example. I don't see any Icelandic company just explicitly stating it. I did read, for example, LS Retail, Controland were encouraging diversity, but none of them is saying we want women, particularly encourage women to apply. You know, this is something that I would love to see. I would love to read it.
Noted. I will set it in when I hire more people. Because we have just been saying like we want people from diverse background and foreigners and things like that, but not stating explicitly women. But regarding becoming a manager is that I founded Parity when my son was 4 years old, and he's my youngest. And 2 years after I read an article about that women change normally their career when their youngest is 4 years old. I was trying to find it before this panel, but I couldn't find it again. And the CEO at Parity is here, and she did the same. She was 20 years at a tech company, and then she changed her career at a similar point. And I've been talking to women, I've been seeing the same pattern. It is because we are we're in a caring role. When we can have babies, we are in this caring role, while it is opposite for men. They are going their own career, and then they give back to the community when they are 60 or something like that. We do the opposite. We become more career-oriented when we have finished the caring role, but of course we don't. We are still carrying on. We take care of our grandmothers. We take care of our mothers. We are, that is, it's more related to us to take that on. We have to take that into account, and then, so it's also regarding, your survey. Is there like age in that one? Like no, it's not. Yeah, I'm just, yeah. Yeah, I'm just. Yeah. Yeah, if a 29-year-old me, instead of 42-year-old me, would say a different thing, I would say. So I think we have to take that into account as well. And we have to, of course, think of ourselves as well during that, baby age. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so a couple of things have come to mind. So one is, because we started talking about job ads a little bit, like in order to have female managers in companies, there have to be female employees at the company in the first place, which is sometimes a problem in the tech industry. And we have had, like I said before, a pretty good success with that. And that has all happened at the top of the funnel level, meaning making sure that women apply. And that is, there are several things that we have done there. One is being thoughtful about our job ads. We haven't called out, we've called out that we want applicants from all walks of life, but we've also, and we haven't called out we want women in particular to apply. That is actually something that we should consider, even though I wonder if that's kind of then focusing on that part rather than kind of just we want everyone. But the other thing we've done, which I think is much more impactful, is that we've had female employees that are already with the company, or we already know that we would love to hire another one like them for the role, and have them read it and say, hey, would you apply for this job? And there are often these like little subtle suggestions that come up that without having done that, I would be totally blind to before. So that's been very very helpful for that kind of top of funnel thing. But then there are the other things that come to mind is that we're talking about companies and management in companies here, and that's just one type of organization. And I think that even if we just focus on how we get more female managers, we also need to look at the other organizations in society. The home is obviously one, and my wife is here. I try to be mindful, but I will not say that I'm perfect in the way we kind of split our roles at home. And I know I'm not, but there are things that you can do. Like one of the things that we have sometimes talked about is when something happens at school, she's always the first one that's called. They have both our numbers. She's always the first one that's called. And if she can pick up, they sometimes won't even call me. And I can't do anything about that. That's something that has to change at that organization. It's something that has to society maybe more broadly. And then the third organization I'd point to there is the companies themselves. Like what you are describing with, not wanting to be there in kind of, so one thing is not being able to be there for kind of drink stuff. The other thing that I find much more, I find them both troubling, but what's much easier for the company to take on is if there's a culture of something happening when people go out after work that makes women uncomfortable. That is like something that the company can actually do something about. I'll say here that we've had a couple of occurrences where we've had conversations with employees about things that have happened that weren't like, they weren't horrible, but they were kind of something that if we don't say something now, something worse might happen later, and something kind of bigger might be said at a later stage. So there are twofold problems there. One is the ability to be there, and the willingness to be there because exhausted because of other things, and then the fact that you know that you need that extra energy because you know it might be uncomfortable, and that's something that is more in the hands of the company to do something about.
Sorry, I just wanted to reflect a bit on the AIDS because it's very interesting, and I need to tell you it's a very short story. I was working with a Swedish company, and we were like trying to help them to find like more female managers, and I was sitting there with like these 3 managers. They were all wearing blue shirts and black jackets, and they were all probably around 55 to 60, or very short age gap, so they were like not diverse. And we were like talking about this. Okay, how can we find them? And and I was like, oh yeah, why don't you just like, can you headhunt someone from? And we were trying to find solution. And he was like, yeah. This guy was like thinking out loud. He was like, yeah, I don't know, how can we find women who are like under 45? And I was like, what? Yeah, like I was like, did you say under 45? And he was like, yeah. I was like, why? Well, isn't that the best? And I was like, and it was so interesting to get into his mind there, and then they all kind of agreed, and they were all like 55 plus. And I think this is more common than I think, and it would be interesting to measure somehow. And because as a woman, I know that we are like after 40, when we have like, many of us raised our kids, and we are like really, really into going. And I'm now doing my startup at 50. I'm going to be 50, and I'm like, I've never been so energized in my life, And we are all like, we really are now in our best time of life. And so this is something we need to also confront.
That's actually very interesting, because a lot of the times when I'm trying to make sense of things happening to me that I'm not happy about, I'm thinking, oh, like Alondra also said, I'm just young, so they probably just see me as young, and that's something that, affects a lot how they perceive me. And I'm always thinking, this is going to get better. Yes. Yes.
What gets better is you stop caring so much. You're just like ready to give everyone the middle finger and walk. My son was 4 when we moved here, actually. That's a really interesting thought, I was like, wow, that's very interesting. But yeah, it doesn't change, it shifts, but I think that women as they age, we just don't care as much. And I was listening to this interesting edition of the Harvard Business Review podcast that between 50 and 60 is an ideal time for women to divorce their partners. Because exactly that. Women have been caregiving for so long, and they're fired up to start their careers or get them going or continue them at a higher pace. And men are kind of in this, like, it's time to retire. And the women are like, oh, no, it's not. And it causes friction in a partnership, and there's a huge increase in divorces around that age because of these different life trajectories and what we expect from life. very differently by gender and what society has told us to expect at this age. So I find that very interesting. Oh, sorry.
Okay, now that it's so funny. Yeah, freestyle. I'm glad that we brought age into this. You know, we've been talking about a lot of our identities and so on, and you guys bring your perspective. I bring mine, you know, like I am young. I am, you know, the epitome of a millennial, and I want to get things done, and I have a young kid, so I have other constraints, you know, and we already discussed, you know, connection networks and so on, but what about lowering the ladder? What about like just accepting the fact that there are so many structural barriers for women to go up the corporate ladder? There is a point where someone will have to lower it for you. You know, many of us, we know we have the potential, but we simply just, I don't know, don't have the time disposition. We are not there to be 24/7 available, or we don't have, you know, a degree in business administration or an MBA. You know, these all are perceptions of what a manager is, what the career trajectory looks like. You know, sometimes women, they just advance because they gain industry-specific knowledge, and then they make it to CEO. Good for them, you know, but if not everyone is given the opportunity to do it by lowering the ladder, helping them, you know. Maybe you don't have, you know, 20 years of experience, you're not going to be a CMO, but, you know, we will invite you to these meetings, you know, we believe in you, we believe in your potential. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would like to add on that one is that regarding CVs, or you know, when you are reading them, is that there was a coworker of mine who said like, I just, you know, a man, he said like, I look at the CV and I said like, wow, he's saying great, he's saying he's like this, and he's like overselling himself, and I'm like, do you like that? I'm like, do you really? And I look at CV, I'm like, oh, I can see, you know, so I look at them totally different than a man. So I maybe were willing to give like a woman an opportunity than a man, because they, you know, tend to do, you know, write CV differently. So this is something to take into account, I would say as well.
Yeah, for example, now that we're touching upon this topic of like open job positions and so on, I remember having this conversation in one of the companies I worked for. We wanted to recruit more women, and we changed the terminology that we're using the job ads. So there was not, for example, requirements, there were desired skills, because we believe that this would open the possibility for women that felt that they were underqualified to have the confidence to apply, and then, you know, being assessed, being invited to an interview and so on. I think these things are very, very important.
No, I think we definitely, yeah, we definitely still have a bit of time, right? So, yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, so you were already giving a few examples of what the organizations that you work for are specifically doing to make sure that they promote inclusion in the organization. Do you have any other examples that we could learn from and implement on our sides in regards to just, you know, making sure that more women do apply, that we do, you know, promote just inclusiveness even past gender? Is there anything else that comes to mind that we can learn from?
Yeah, I'm still reflecting on the last conversation, but it will a bit, you know, also touch on this point. But when you said like lowering the ladder, I think that we should not use that language, because then we are saying that the typical is male. Because I find that like in my job, I'm not really, well, of course, hopefully I am creating opportunity for everybody, equal opportunities. But I'm also, I think this is really of a beneficial for the organization. Because the organization is, you probably heard about the stupid curve. It's how we are wasting talents in the society, within sectors, when we are not getting diverse groups in. And you know, we're like here in Iceland, we have had like the last 20 years more women than men graduating from the university. But then it's so skewed when you look at the work environment where you have like so few women in the top positions there. So like what happens there? That's the company culture, like hindering them to enter. And so I think it's very important for organizations to retain this talent, to recruit these talents, because now, if you look at the Icelandic society, to be honest, we don't have the top talent in management positions. It's a fact. And this is something we need to change. Yeah, just few more, and it's like, what do we need to do? I'm getting very, so it's like, just in a few, it's really, really simple what we need to do. Like as an organization, we need to, of course, measure. We need to measure, we need to know the situation. How is the situation in my company regarding company culture, regarding all like the measurements about gender, age, ethnicity, everything we need to measure about diversity. And we need to set goals. And we need to have KPIs. You know, it's really simple. It's like we do with everything else. And we need to educate. And education is key here. And we need to continue it. It's not like it's a long-term project. It's not a short-term. It's something we need to be doing all the time. So that needs to be interesting in order for people to want to be part of it.
To add on what you were saying about the talent being wasted in Iceland, I want to maybe to the ladies at Gecko that I see they're here and the work that they're doing, that it's so for those who are not familiar with it, there was an interview with the Minister of Innovation and Higher Education and something more that we're gonna, because they're always playing this game of changing the ministries. And she said Iceland needs 800 more specialists to fly into the country and sit in these roles that will be opening for them. And this created a lot of, fire among people that are in Iceland, that have the talent and that are not being hired, that they are not being heard. So thank you very much, because there are a lot of people graduating, but as you very, very well said and challenged me there is not one ladder, because there is no one path to success. There is not one way to advance your career. There will be very many, and there are a lot of people in this country that, deserve to get a chance in the workplace, and they're not getting it. So how are we, making sure that the companies are not, posting job ads in Icelandic and getting people, wasting their times interviewing them, when there are people with wonderful qualities, just, waiting there like a golden retriever, hire me, hire me, hire me. What about that?
So to bounce off you, 100% I agree. Also, you need to stop having hiring managers who shift people to the bottom of the pile because they do not have Icelandic names. Which has been told to me by multiple hiring managers that is what they do. You need to stop evaluating my credentials differently because I am not Icelandic, as you would evaluate my husband's credentials, who was also educated in the United States, because he is Icelandic. You need to stop forcing people like me to go through the ENIC-NARIC system when my husband's PhD from an American university is never questioned because he is Icelandic. Like, this must stop. Those 800 talented people are here plus. We do not need to fly them in from anywhere. That makes me so angry. I just was like you said, I was so angry. But I've been angry with her before, so whatever. Yeah, we'll just keep going with the anger on that one. There's things like that. You need to stop dinging women for things that you promote men for. You need to stop dinging me because I do write the marketing pushy CV, because damn it, I'm smart and I've done a lot of things and I think that I should be appreciated for that. Not given a job, but at least given a chance. Whereas the man comes in all swagger and they're like, wow, you're fabulous. I walk in and I'm like, listen, you need to listen to me. And it's like, oh, you're pushy. You're too aggressive. Oh no, you don't fit in with the culture here because you don't smile enough. You know, and these are all things that have been told me, so I can make a joke out of it, but this is my lived reality, and I bet the lived reality of every woman, and especially every foreign woman in this room. You know? And so, like, stop doing it. And it's not education. I'm sorry, we live in the age of instant information. You have a responsibility to educate yourself. If you are the norm, if you are the default, you have a responsibility to educate yourself. You do not have the right to push that responsibility onto the people who are already overloaded as it is. You don't have the right to turn to a woman and say, educate me on women's rights. You don't have a right to turn to a person of color and say, educate me on racism. That is bullshit. Sorry, I am going to cuss because I'm really mad now. That's just the wrong way to think about it. You have the power, you have the resources, you probably even have the emotional space because somebody else is taking care of your home life. Google that stuff and listen to the people who have already written a bazillion things on it. Don't doubt it because it's not your experience. The core tenet is evidence, or the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Because you have not experienced in your life does not mean it doesn't exist. Do your work. Don't expect the people who are already overloaded to do your work for you. That's what we need to change.
Thank you for that. Yes, coming from the video game industry, as at least the CCP, there were a lot of people that, you know, were flown in from Iceland. So I did not experience this in CCP. There were a lot of foreigners there. And also at Party, we are 25% foreigners. They are, though, all male. But we're hiring the first woman on Monday, hopefully. Hopefully she's signing on Monday. But she lives in Iceland, and yeah. So we are, of course, you know, as a CEO, I'm very aware of all of these things, and I look at CV from that, and I try to take everything into account from this perspective. And also, yeah, it's good to hear that there are, you know, these 800 people are here in Iceland, so apply at Party. We need more women, we need more, you know, talent there. And so I think we are doing part of this and helping this, but we, of course, can do a lot more.
Yeah, so the question was kind of, you know, if there was something we could talk about that others could maybe learn from. So I'll just maybe talk through a couple of things that we do. I've already talked about the top of funnel being the most important piece. You know, the job ads, that's already come up with, you know, everybody on the panel, probably everybody here knows also about kind of, you know, how men apply if they can check one of the bullets on the list, but a woman doesn't if she can't check all of them. So those types of things and how you word them and phrase them. This is, you know, that's certainly something that is possible to Google and learn that way. But then if we don't see enough applicants, enough diversity in the applicants, we will actually go out and make sure that we get applications also from that represent people that are not applying. That is a varying degree of you know, of difficulty in finding those applicants. You know, certain positions are simply much more male skewed, even in the tech industry than others, and vice versa. We sometimes set out that we say we would like to hire, usually, you know, because the balance is that way, a woman for this position. We have once said when we opened the position, we would actually like it if if the applicant we like most would be male, and that was for our office manager position, because that's stereotypically a female position. And we have a wonderful male office manager. He was also, like all the women we've hired, they were, you know, as we went through the funnel, they were the most qualified applicants as well. So I don't think we're lowering the bar. We're just trying to make sure that there is that we have representation throughout the funnel. This also reflects in the language and the images on your website. You know, because we are in a fairly good position, then, you know, the fact that there are pictures of the management team, and it's not all there are only 2 bald male middle-aged men there, and then the other 2 are women. And of our team, like making sure that there, people see the office, which is nice, and the different people that work for us and so on. So all this kind of, all this comes together in something important for that matter. But then there's also the culture inside the company. Making sure that certain behaviors are just absolutely not allowed. Making sure that when you are, also just the advisors, the board, like trying to get that representation all over, and then. Culture tends to reflect the early employees, and then obviously if the early employees are a certain way, then the culture will go in a certain direction, and it's really hard to pull it back. So you have to be thoughtful about the culture from day one, and there are multiple ways that that can be done. Generally speaking, though, I think that the culture that attracts diverse talent is a culture that everybody likes. It's not just a culture that women like. It's actually, I think, men working in a diverse workplace typically actually feel like that's a better workplace than a workplace that is very male-oriented or very male-dominated, let alone a very toxic, one that tends to happen also.
Hi, everyone. Catherine from Gecko. Thank you for the mention. I appreciate it. And thank you, Hallie. You were one of the people that did take a meeting with me to help me when I was going through my kind of like advisory period of ideas for the business. So thank you. But I also want to congratulate the 2 other men in the room. Thank you for showing up today, because this is actually one of the huge problems that we have. I love coming to these meetings because I always go away so empowered because I'm surrounded by such incredible women. But the problem is we're preaching to women. We are preaching the same stories over and over again about how it is to be a woman in the workplace, or how it is to be a woman, just in life in general. So, if you're a CEO, you're a founder, you're an influencer, you're any of these things, it's your job to get out there. And if you see a women-led event, you get your guys in the room to listen to the problems and listen to the stories. So that's a challenge I'm going to put out there. But we also talked a little bit about kind of like the management and like women having to only see the fact that they're going to move on in their career by being a manager. We need to see a lot more change within the Icelandic society, because everybody goes through huge educational programs here, and the only way you can get on in your career is by managing people and leading. There's other ways we can lead. We can go through a leadership program, and if companies are having more of a shift towards having an individual contributor versus a leadership route, and you then have the choice of which way you want to go, then it means that more women will be able to go up the ladder, as opposed to taking those rungs down and having to just take an acceptance. So, I just wanted to put the challenge out there to get more men in the room when we're having these meetings. Thank you.
I think if there's men on the live feed, make yourself known in the comments section.
Hi, my name is Áslaug Eva. You mentioned role models, and I feel like lately we've seen women go up the ladder, but I feel like their strengths are male, like the male strengths. So the role models we are seeing is that the women in management that are getting up the ladder, either hired or promoted in the companies, don't have the core female strength that we are seeing. And I want to ask, what's your point of view? How can we change this? Because I have a lot of female strengths, and it's hard to see how are we gonna get up there? Do we have to be female strengths to actually get up there, get hired, get promoted? So I would actually want to get your point of view on that. How can we actually change this?
I'm going to give you the mic so you can give your point of view.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what female strengths are, but I have an idea. I have an idea. I think one thing in the narrative, in the dominant narrative right now, there's a lot going on about how these are the soft skills we need for business leaders. And they're typically things that are aligned with feminine. So can we just stop? Can we pretend for a little while like there's no hard skills or soft skills? There's just skills. They're just skills. And if we truly believe they're skills, then they're something anyone can learn. They're not inherent in the feminine. They're not inherent in the masculine. They are learnable skills that if you desire to have them, then you can go out and find ways to learn them, right? So I think that's one thing, is we need to maybe not split things so much. And if we are really talking about skills, then talk about them as skills. It's like I'm a trained mediator and alternative dispute resolution person. Those are skills I train for. It's not inherent in me. I'm not a good communicator because I'm a girl. I'm a good communicator because I trained those friggin' skills for years and years and years and years. But yet that's a soft skill, even though it took me a lot of training and practice to get it. And so I think we need to not maybe talk about more feminine skills or masculine skills or soft or hard or whatever, but just admit that they are skills. I know I'm asking for a lot. Don't get me wrong. And I know I'm asking for the hard thing, like let's really change culture. But I think that's the only way it's going to happen. If we can continue to split and we can continue to prioritize and protect masculinity, that is what society will continue to do, because of what you said. The culture starts at the beginning, and we've been inheriting this culture for a very, very long time. But we got to start somewhere. So push back in your own language. Language really, really matters. Push back in how you talk about these things. And we had that discussion. I don't think anybody lowered the ladder for you. I don't. In fact, I find that really upsetting that you maybe think that about yourself, and I feel like we need to talk. But I'm like, no, nobody lowered the ladder for me. Somebody did champion me, don't get me wrong. They were willing to put their reputation on the line for me, and that's what I'm saying to the Icelanders. You want a challenge? Champion non-Icelandic women in the workplace. I would not be in this position that I'm in if a male Icelander had not put his entire reputation on the line for me. And I don't know what he saw, but it's true. And nobody lowered the bar, but somebody was able to say, this person is worth it. So look for those people. And if you're in that position, champion them. That is your job. Do it like it's your job, because it is.
But I didn't say that someone lowered the ladder for me, but what I'm saying is changing the vocabulary. I see you, Beatrice. Then let's phrase it differently. We need to actively and explicitly craft career path for people with different skills, and not stereotypes their skills. But I wanted to add to what you're saying and answer your question. We also need to acknowledge that there is still a lot of genderized professions and very genderized sectors as well, as all of you have pointed out. So we need to, like I just said, define what the career path for your high potential looks like. I also experienced the same as you that you're mentioning, having a very strong Icelandic ally by my side who pushed me forward. Whatever their motives were, they own the company, so whatever you're doing, we want to bring them the profit. Whatever that is, you benefit from it. But we need to understand that, men, finance, people perceive the CEO as, he was the finance manager, he was the CFO, and then he will be the CEO, But what positions within top leadership management women are holding? Director of marketing, CMO. Do you see a CMO CEO, or do you see the CFO as turning into CEO? The COO turning into CEO? Okay, how do we challenge that? How do we understand that a manager is not necessarily the person that is available 24/7 for the workplace? It's a person that drives the results, that pushes the teamwork, that gets shit done, whatever it takes, however they can understand, work-family balance, all of these things need to be challenged, but understanding this, okay, I see everyone's pressuring me, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think this could easily be many more hours of discussion. Completely agree, but sadly this is our time, and thank you very much to all the panelists and for the insights that you shared and your experiences with us, and we'll just and we'll see you at the next one, hopefully, yes, with a lot of more male attendance. Yes.
Yeah, because we at Empower, we are hiring soon, so please apply.